First of all, thank you, Hollis, for working with me and everyone. And I probably have met a number of you. I've attended a lot of ASHI conferences, not the last couple of years, but before that. And I've had the honor and privilege of meeting a number of you. So if we know each other already, hello again. If we don't, well, let's find the time when we can get to know each other. Tonight, I'd like to talk about adding value and business opportunities for home inspectors. The learning objectives. Now, Hollis touched on some of my background. I'll tell you a little bit more about me in a minute. I started in education 25 years ago while I was still building and remodeling and designing. And one of the main things I was told, whenever you present something or whenever you're teaching somebody, tell them what you're going to teach them, and then tell them what they learned. There's a better chance of remembering something. So let me follow the advice of the smart people. Our learning objectives tonight. Number one, to understand why changes are needed in home design products. You know, that old line of we've always done it this way. I'm not so sure that's a good line. I don't do things in construction the same as I did 50 years ago. 50 years ago, you'd watch painters. I was working commercial, spraying with red lead paint in a building, and everybody's coughing and gagging. When I was young and started in the trades, the old guys were all a little wacko, at least the plumbers and electricians. And everybody knew it was because they were using lead. Electricians dipped the wires in lead, so they had a bubbling pot of lead. So did the plumbers. That's just how they used to do things. So how we used to do things is not always the best way. Second thing we're going to cover is to analyze some business opportunities. What are some ideas for work? Then we'll talk about evaluating adding home value, adding value to homes. When you're working with a client, and if you can convince them that you can add value to their home, they like you. Then we'll wrap it up with creating some next steps. Anytime you have a question or a comment, put it in the chat. I'll decide then whether I want to address that question. So if you want to ask, what kind of a banjo were you playing earlier? I'll talk about that at the end. But if you want to talk about something on the screen, I just might talk about that. Here's a little bit more about me. Yes, over 50 years in the industry. Someday I'll have to grow up. That's when I'll figure out what I want to do. I hold 9 different credentials, and I'm an instructor for all of those. I only teach the first 3 now. Other ones that you may or may not know, CLIP, LIPA, and HATS, those are all part of the Living in Place Institute. Some people know about CAPS, Certified Aging in Place Specialist from the National Association of Home Builders. I'm number 43. CASH is Certified Active Adult Specialist in Housing. Then Certified Graduate Remodeler, Certified Green Professional. I love teaching the green classes, how to do things a little bit better. Through the EPA, I'm a repair and renovation professional, lead, and I am a lead dust sampling technician. I am actually uniquely qualified to come to a job site where people have removed lead and take a little cotton swab and put it in a baggie and send it off to the lab. That takes a credential to do that. Awards, won lots of those. One thing I want to point out, the next one, former Habitat for Humanity Executive Director for Denver. I learned about Habitat when I moved to Colorado and I started working in residential work. I had no idea what it was. I fell in love with the idea of Habitat, became involved, ended up chairing, and then when our local executive director left, I took the job. I actually closed down a successful company for 2 years and went on staff as executive director. That's when I really, really learned the value of a team. Here in Denver, we were building 12, 15 houses a year. We had about 4,000 volunteers. The problem was we focused on the homeowners, not the volunteers. So during my tenure, we turned the focus to the volunteers, and I don't know what housing production is now, but it went up dramatically once we gave the volunteers an opportunity to do their thing. Some other stuff here, some work with the NAHB. Oh, I had a talk radio show for a couple of years. That was a lot of fun. Self-funded that. National conference speaker, as you can see, ASHI is on there. I'm very proud of that. named this and that and the other thing, been in front of a lot of audiences, blah, 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 blah. Here is who I really am though. I'm a proud grandfather. In a minute, I'm going to show you a picture of my grandchildren. And I'm a professional musician. Professional, as you know, means you got paid. So somewhere along the way, I got paid to play a little music. So I can call myself a professional musician. I live in the mountains of Colorado, just west of Denver. I live at an elevation of about 7,200 feet. I noticed there was somebody on the session here tonight from Colorado. I live in Evergreen. My wife and I live here, and if you've probably guessed it already, when I put on a big red suit and a red hat at Christmas time, we do visit thousands of children. Here's why I stay involved in the housing industry. My mom and my dad. My dad just passed away less than 2 months ago. An amazing gentleman, amazing. A celebrated veteran. He flew in World War II. He has a lot of, not credentials, I won't say it. He retired as a colonel. But I recently read some of his history, and I'm just stunned. That man directed policies and procedures for the U.S. Air Force. After the war, he went over there and he helped organize the nation of China. And a great guy. On his deathbed, he was still cognitively fresh. His body fell apart. He told me when I was young, son, your body's like a car. One day it just isn't going to run anymore. So he passed within about a week or 10 days of illness. In the hospital, he wanted to talk to his lawyer because he had ideas on how to make the hospital beds more comfortable. That's my dad. Let me think of how to help other people. My mom is still with us. She is a retired pastor of a church in Washington, D.C. Here's what I'm most proud of, my 2 grandchildren. This picture was taken 2 years ago. There I am holding my youngest granddaughter. My other granddaughter, Lavender, she's a delight. She's 4 years old now, and I'm so excited because this morning my wife said, look, there's a circus coming to Denver. I immediately called her parents, of course, asked for permission, but she doesn't know yet. But in a week, I'm going to take her to the circus. My goal tonight is to help you. My goal is to help you tonight, tomorrow, and all persons in the housing and the medical related industry to make homes better. I don't want my 2 grandchildren going into a home and somebody saying, oh, this is how we've always done it. You mean you only put 1 handrail? Oh, that's how we always do it. That's not as safe as it can be. So my goal in life now is to make the world better for my grandchildren. So our objectives. Let's go back and start on objective number 1. Understanding why changes are needed in home designs and products. Again, why do we need to do this? I just mentioned stair handrails. I have no idea why somebody decided only 1 handrail is enough. So let's talk about the building codes. There's a lot of building codes. Most of us are familiar with building codes and how they trickle down and how they become adopted. I tried looking online the other day, how many building codes are there? And I couldn't find anything. We know every local jurisdiction. So you'd have to look at how many cities, how many counties, parishes, states are in the country, and then figure out how many building codes. It's overwhelming. It really is overwhelming. What we need to focus on, though, is the fact that building codes are the minimum. I never understood that. In my 50 years of building, nobody ever said, well, Eric, this is the absolute minimum we have to do. Is that what you want for yourself, for your grandchildren, for your clients? The absolute minimum? I don't think any of us want that. Here's just a few things that the building codes do not consider. They don't address. Doorbells, smoke carbon monoxide alarms for people who have hearing challenges. Just recently, within the last year, we started seeing on the shelves of the big box stores alarms that have a strobe light built in. Even though we all know in public spaces, those have been required for decades. Why the manufacturers didn't make that in their homes, for homes, I don't know. Louis Delaware is my business partner. He approached me in 2013 He took an aging class from me, wanted to write a book on senior safety. I said, great, let's do it. That idea quickly morphed into what I'm presenting from today, the Living in Place Institute. We actually did write a book. We will not let the book be published until there's enough people trained. We don't want to put a book out saying you need to put in 2 handrails, and then somebody else shows up and says, oh, you don't need that. We've never done it that way. You don't need that. Louis's grandfather, about 45 years ago, was hard of hearing. He had flown in World War I and lost most of his hearing because of airplanes. Louis lived with him for about a year in college. Louis said his grandfather actually hooked up a strobe light to his smoke alarm. They never had to, enable that. There was never any dangers. But what an amazing thing. 45 years ago, some guy figured we should have lights in our smoke alarms. And again, until the last year. Here's a question for you. Look around the room you're in. Is there a smoke alarm? Now, most of you know where alarms are required, but why not just put one in every room? If smoke's a nuisance, we know you can put in a heat detector rather than a smoke alarm. But when you look around your house or the building that you're working in, look for plastic that's yellowed. They actually designed and used specific plastic compounds that would yellow at about 10 years. That industry decided that every 10 years, the technology has changed, so you really need to replace all of your alarms. But they didn't tell us that. Nobody put on the box. Nobody put on the alarm. Replace when plastic turns yellow. So let's think about that. Let's think about changing what we're doing. Easy and accessible operations of Windows. There are no code requirements for Windows and how Windows work. The direction a door opens. I think Florida might be the only place where a door, an exterior door, is required to open out. The thinking is for hurricane and wind damage. But in a home, bathrooms. Bathrooms are the most dangerous room in the house. There are many accidents in the bathroom. And if you ask a medical expert if they've ever had a patient who fell in the bathroom and nobody could get to them because they couldn't open the door, there are probably a million stories like that. So, we've always built bathrooms this way. Let's stop building that way. These are just a few of the points I'm giving you, things that you can add into your thinking, because you're all home inspectors. You know what the code is. You probably know it way better than I do. And you're really great. You're passionate about, let's make sure everything is right here. What I'm leading you to now is to understand there are things that go beyond that code, because it is the minimum. I already mentioned this, 2 handrails on stairways. Why are there 2 handrails? I don't know. That would probably triple the handrail industry, their volume of work, if they just put in 2 handrails. And adding to a second handrail, extend the railing beyond the top and bottom of stairs. We know that's required in public spaces. Public spaces require 12 inches. I tried that in a home one time and it didn't look very good. So at the bottom of the railing, I extended it to 12. It didn't look good. I actually extended it all the way down to the next doorway, returned the railing back to the wall. I thought it looked good. The homeowner came in, said, looks great. I asked, well, I extended it down the hallway. Is that okay? And believe it or not, they said, aren't all handrails? Don't they all do that? Well, this client I'm speaking of was personal friends of mine. The husband didn't know who I was. He was having a lot of cognitive issues. So every time he'd walk in the room, he'd go, oh, who are you? I'd say, hi, my name is Eric. I'm a contractor. I've just arrived to do some work here. Okay. Well, that day when I put in the handrail with the extension, Paul and his wife came home. Paul said, oh, who are you? And I told him I was a contractor again. We watched him walk down the stairway with his hand on both handrails. He got to the bottom, his hand slid right down to the hallway, and he turned and went to the door as if it had always been there. It was so cool to see that. Yeah, let's talk about that in a little while, Ronald. I see Ronald put in something in the chat. A lot of that in the 55 and above living areas. Builder not interested in going the extra mile for seniors. He needs to come to one of our classes so we can help him understand It's not just for seniors, it's for everyone. And you're going to learn more about why I say that. Color contrast. In our public access codes, public spaces, there are code requirements for color contrast in exit signs, and I think that's it. There are no code requirements commercially or especially in residential for color contrast. Human beings, we see dark as a distance. If you hold up a candle right in front of your face, it's pretty bright. Hold it a mile away, I wouldn't be able to see it. I wouldn't be able to see it 100 feet away, probably. So the farther away things are, the darker they are. So our brains are wired to see a dark floor as a whole. An infant, most animals won't go across that dark, into that dark area. They think it's a hole. Unfortunately, or fortunately, as humans, we learn at a very young age, it's probably a flat floor. So we've learned walking from a white floor to a dark floor is okay. But what happens when a person is older, or even a younger person with some cognitive challenges where they forget that that's level? There are many, many stories I've heard of a person walking from one room to another and they just fell. The medical professionals will tell you it's because they had high contrast floor colors and their brain thought they were stepping up or down. That caused a misstep. We can fix that. Illumination for individuals with different vision abilities. If I could see everybody right now, I would guess that about 2/3 of you are wearing eyeglasses, because that's the average number of people that wear eyeglasses. About another 10 or 11% wear contacts. So most 2/3 of the US wear eyeglasses. Now, one time I was talking to a large audience of medical people. Someone came up later and said, Eric, just because you wear eyeglasses doesn't mean you have a disability. I said, obviously you don't wear eyeglasses because when I take them off, I can't see. Here's a statistic I'd like to give you that's out of one of our classes. The amount of light that you need to see, the difference between a 20-year-old and a 60-year-old. Anybody want to guess how much more light you need? If you think you know how much more light, you can tell me how many times more light or percentage. Put it in the chat. Let's see. 40% more light? Nope. Keep going. How much more light do you need to see when you're 60 than when you're 20? Anybody else want to make a guess? No. It's actually 3 times. JT came close. Jen, you're a little bit over, but I'm 71. Well, I'll be 71 in a couple of days. Jen's probably right. It's probably about 400% for me. But the average between 20 and 60 is 300%. To put that in kind of a way I could understand, think of going into a black room and turning on a 25-watt light bulb. That's what a 60-year-old sees. Now turn on a 75-watt light bulb. That's what a 20-year-old sees. That much of a difference. So my having been an electrician, the rule of thumb was always put in twice as much light as what you think. What I teach now is, no, put in 5 or 10 times more light than you think. Control it. That's all. I see another Eric there. You're right. 300%. It's amazing. Let's talk a minute about our homes. Hollis, because our times are different, how long do you want me to run? When do you want me to zip it up and start playing banjo?
17 after.
17 after. Oh, maybe I should go get my banjo right. It's here. We won't do that now. Our homes are our private places, right? Everyone prides themselves. My home is my castle. I see JT. Yeah, let's play some music. Let's just do that. Our homes are our castle. And what do we always hear and what do we say? You can't tell me what to do in my house. And I'm that way too. You can't tell me what to do in my house. But do I want the plumbing to work and electrical work and the doors to work? Absolutely. So do I want my house to be code compliant? Absolutely. So I'm okay with you telling me that. But beyond that, you can't tell me, just like in the chat there a while ago, a builder, you can't tell me I have to turn the door around the bathroom. You can't tell me I have to use 36-inch wide doors. No, But look at this, 100 years of a home. I don't know how long the average house lasts. One of our graduates a couple years ago, he was from Germany. He said the home he lived in was 800 years old. Where I live in Colorado, 150 years ago, they were just a few little, minor type cabins here. So let's just say 100 years. Homes last longer than that. They certainly should. So 100 years, we know the average family will live about 13 years in a house before they sell the house. We know the pandemic, things have changed a little bit, but on an average, 13 years. And we know there's about 2.5 people per family. So if we do the math quickly, we find out that it'll be about 24 people in a 100-year period. So do we need to pay any attention? So I'll put on my builder hat right now and say, hey, 24 people in 100 years, I'm not going to spend my time and trouble trying to put in 2 handrails. That's just, it's not worth it. It's only 24 people. What's the chance of one of them having an issue? Now let's add in a visitor. Just 1 visitor a week. Now, I can't find statistically how many visitors there are a week in an average home. And I've had some people say, nobody ever comes to my house. I'm that way. Even before the pandemic, my wife and I are pretty private. We just don't have company in our home. But I have a friend that pre-pandemic, every month he had 30 to 50 people in his home, family, friends. He just liked doing that. There are other visitors in our home, delivery people, workers. You are a visitor in a home. So when we add in that 1 visitor a week in a 100-year period, now there's 5,000 people walking in the front door. So our codes say public spaces don't apply to a private home. Well, I would like to counter that. I would like to see a brave building department say, okay, if there's 5,000 people walking in that front door, we're going to shift our policy and consider that a public space. That means the builder is going to have to put in a 0 threshold. I don't mean a low, I mean 0 lighting. Why not? I'm not going to go into it tonight, but a 0 threshold door, you can't buy that. Residential. Commercial, you can. It's called an automatic door bottom. It just routes in the bottom of any wood door, and you can have an absolutely smooth floor. So now we have 5,000 people. Okay, what's the chance of one of them having some sort of a disability? It's actually quite high. Of those 5,000, 1,300 of those people have some sort of a challenge: mobility, vision, cognition. Again, I'll show you all that in a minute. So in 100 years of a home, we've gone from worrying about 24 people, now we're worried about 5,000 people, of which 1,300 have a challenge. I designed a new front entry once for a client. I got rid of the steps that went down and put in a big walkway, still in the design process. Husband and wife sat down with me one evening. The husband said, well, where are the steps? How do I get from a house down to the driveway? I used to just walk down these steps. This drawing you have, Eric, there's no steps. I said, yeah, that's because we replaced it with a walkway. The wife said, oh, I love that. I can put in flowers, and she liked that. And the husband said, well, I like that too. But what's wrong with steps? Well, the wife spoke up and said, well, what if someone in a wheelchair wanted to come visit us? The husband, very straight face, said, I don't know anybody in a wheelchair. The wife said, what about the guy that lives across the street in a wheelchair? Husband said, well, he never comes to visit me anyway. Wife just shook her head. She said, proceed with the project, Eric. So that's just typical. The man wasn't trying to be insensitive, but, well, the guy never comes to visit because he couldn't get in your house. So we need to focus on the home today. If we focus on that house today, we impact the community forever. That's our challenge. I know you as home inspectors, a lot of the industry is driven by wanting to mitigate potential claims and insurance and problems. I mean, how many times have you said, well, you need a new water heater, and the homeowner says, well, it's been here for 25 years, it works fine. Yeah, well, you and I both know, don't touch the fittings. Don't even touch that water heater. It's close to dying. Designing and building for who? Who are we designing and building for? Now, we just build it the way, but sometimes there's people with issues. Sometimes there's people in wheelchairs. So as an industry, we started talking about, let's design and build for people in wheelchairs. And I agree. I'm one of those people that, a couple decades ago said, yes, absolutely, let's design for people in wheelchairs. What I didn't know was that there's only 1 out of 100 Americans use a wheelchair. That's a low percentage. Only 1 out of 100 people use a wheelchair. So why should I be designing entryways and ramps if it's only 1 out of 100 people? That's pretty distant. Now, as you can see on the slide, 4 out of 100 use a walking aid, and for seniors, the number jumps up to 40% of the people use a walking aid. I learned a term last year from the medical people, furniture surfing. I remembered it because I said, hey, I'm a surfer from a long time ago. What's furniture surfing? Do I like take my couch out on the waves? I don't get it. The medical person said, no, that's when a person walks through the home, and as they walk, they touch things. They'll put their hand on the couch, on the door frame. That's how they get by. So we need to be designing and building, thinking of that person who wants to furniture surf or needs. So instead of designing and building for a person's in a wheelchair, let's design and build for everyone. Let's take away this complexity of, oh, those people, because we are those people. So let's just start talking about, there's an example. How about a woman carrying a sack of groceries and a child? I used to put on a lot of consumer seminars, and I'd have a couple people come up and I would show them the difference between a 36-inch hallway and a wider. And I would ask two people, stand shoulder to shoulder. Well, most people, you're already at the 36 inches. Now I'd ask, well, now just one person, pretend like you're holding groceries and a child. They'd have their elbows out, and I'd show them, you're bumping door frames, especially a 30-inch door. You'd have to turn sideways. That's not safe. So let's focus on the home today, and we help all ages. And how many of your clients, or how many of you like the word aging? In the last couple of years, I've seen a lot more discussions about, let's stop using the word aging, like aging in place. Yeah, well, we're all aging in place since we were born. You can see me, I told you my age, and if you tell me what a man my age needs, I'm not going to be happy with you. Because unless you are a man, unless you're my age, with my experiences with 50 years of carrying 2x4s and climbing up and down ladders, I'm pretty well shot. But I don't think so. I don't like that term aging. I spoke recently to the American Society on Aging, and I spoke about reimagined housing. Imagine housing that works for seniors, so we don't have to go out and build senior housing. They can stay at home. I see where Kyle, aging like fine wine. Yep. Kyle, a couple of years ago, I was asked to give a statement on what it's like to age. And I kind of went, you asking me? Everybody laughed. And I said, well, when we're old, we think we're young. When we're young, we think we're old. And in between, we don't think. There's a lot of truth to that, isn't it? I know when I was a young person, I thought, wow, I'm a man of the world. Now, I still think I'm 17 years old. I stopped snowboarding when I helped write this class, when I found statistically the dangers and hazards of jumping off a 50-foot cliff with racing equipment on. So when I hit the ground, I would accelerate to, I don't know, 40, 50, 60 miles an hour. I have no idea. That was before I had a phone that would tell me how fast I'm going. I stopped when I found out how dangerous that is. My friend said, well, Eric, you can still come out with us and just take it easy. And they laughed with, you're not going to take it easy. You just go for it. You're just there all the time. Yes, I am. Here's a common misunderstanding. People with disabilities, it's them, the older adults. Not me, obviously, but the older adults. How many of us think that way? Oh, I see Hollis, maturing. Yeah, a maturing adult. Well, that still sounds a little bit condescending to me. There's a lot of expressions out there that we don't like. Like here's one. Gee, Eric, he's just an old coot. Well, that's a derogatory expression. Actually, if you look it up, I would be pleased if you call me an old coot. A coot is an animal that can swim and fly. So if you want to tell me I'm a creature that can swim and fly, call me an old coot. But I don't think that's what you meant when you called me an old coot. One of our graduates who works for the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. He is the chief responsible for all the grant programs. We were visiting a couple years ago, and he told me there was a group of, he's called them younger people. And this guy, Jay, he's probably 50 years old, so he's nowhere near my age. He said one of them looked over at him and said, "Oh, you're a baby boomer?" And they all started laughing at him. Jay said I thought a baby boomer was an okay term, not to the young people. To a young person, a baby boomer is, you're way beyond your history. If we focus on the older adults, then we ignore designing and building for people of all ages. So what I'm talking about here is a simple approach. Let's just design and build for everyone. Denial of our own conditions is natural. How many of us think we're getting old? How many of us, if you think you're old, put it in the chat. Let's see who is actually willing to say I'm old. How old are you, Eric? Richard, how old are you? Oh, I see. Nope, not me. Yep. I'm a millennial, 51, 46, seasoned. I like that, Ronald. You're seasoned. Well, I'm not so. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. Some people don't like seasoned stuff. We're all different ages. Vintage, I like that. 41-year-olds old, feeling it every day. Now, Barry, this is to Barry Young. I remember before I was 40, people said, well, when you hit 40, you go downhill. Well, when I turned about 41, Barry, I assumed going downhill meant you're just kind of like go down a hill. I didn't know it meant boom. It's like falling off a cliff after you turn 40. And in case you didn't know it, cognitive decline starts accelerating at age 40. Bud, older than dirt. That's pretty old. Rusted years, not golden. I like that. I'm learning some things here. Stephen and Jim, oh, you 73 and 72. Hey, everybody, that's the old guys. Can you hear me, Jim? If you can hear me, nod your head. Okay, Jim. Are you okay?
Yes, Jim. We got you loud and clear.
Yeah. So we need to be very, very careful. Those making the decisions and recommendations, we must take the initiative. We must make sure that everything is done much, much better. Here's a chart from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. 26% of age 18 plus in the US have a disability. I didn't say 55 and over or 65 and older. 26%. 1 in 4 of us have one of these challenges. The biggest number is mobility. Almost 14% of the US population has a mobility challenge. So now when I say, that ramp and the 2 handrails and better lighting really makes sense now when about 1 out of 6 people have a problem that you can help. And look in the parentheses, 85% of those people develop that disability during their lifetime. They weren't born with it. It developed. It's necessary to go beyond the minimum requirements. That's what we have to do. We have to go beyond the minimum. I'm glad we don't have cars that have the absolute minimum requirements for safety. The auto industry decades ago I guess the auto industry and the insurance industry talked, and the insurance industry said, you know, fixing cars, accidents are costing so much, nobody can afford a new car because insurance costs so much. So you better make the cars so that they don't get hurt. I'm going to guess that's why the cost of cars doubled. For some of you who are around my age, my first car in 1973 was a Ford Mustang, little hatchback, 2 doors, 3-speed stick, an 8-cylinder engine. It was a rocket ship. Would I like to have that car today? No, I would not drive that car today. I want ABS brakes. I want a roll cage around me. I want an envelope around me that will save me if I do have an accident. Analyze additional building opportunities. So let's talk a little bit about some other ideas. How many of you are now working with home designers and contractors? Put it in the chat with you if you are. Are any of you working hand in hand, maybe as a contractor, as an independent contractor, going into homes? JT, good, good, good. Not many are. So let's imagine a little bit. Not a lot, good bud. Let's say, what if you as a home inspector could offer your services to designers and contractors for remodeling projects? In the 20 plus years that I was remodeling, I apologize to all of you because I never once thought, wow, what if I bring you in and I pay you? What if I bring in a home inspector to tell the client all the little things that need to be fixed? Then the client would have said, well, Eric, as long as you're here, can you replace the water heater? Can you fix those shingles? Can you fix that window that's cracked? Sure, be happy to add that into the job. I would have loved you to have been there and upsold my job, giving me some advantages. I would have loved for that to happen. What if you as a home inspector offer your services to recommend improvements? So not just, so again, I'm the designer contractor and you're in there saying, oh, the water heater needs fixed and the front door isn't working right. What if I brought you in, and what if you were trained to say, oh, well, handrails, we always recommend 2 handrails because it helps, especially if you're carrying a child up and down the stairs. Oh, all my clients would have said, well, then Eric, can you add in another handrail? So now you can see, oh, JT, you're working with VA. Absolutely, that's great. You know, the problem with the VA, they can't get enough contractors and professionals to do the work that's necessary. That's their biggest problem. They have an insane amount of money they'd like to hand you, but they can't get enough professionals. So think about going beyond just what you've normally done in inspections and add in some more quality of life to talk about, well, you know, the lighting value should be changed. What if you were able to advertise and talk to homeowners to help them know how to maintain their home to not age in place, but to continue to live in place? A few years ago, the AARP conducted a study that was called Fixing to Stay. And in that study, we found that 89 point something, so 90% of seniors want to fix their home to stay there. Unfortunately, that study was misquoted. And what we started seeing from others, not the AARP, but others said 90% of seniors want to age in place. That's not what the study said. I think as a senior, if somebody would have said, do you want to age in place? I would have said, no, I don't want to age. So we need to think, if that study was 90% of seniors want to fix to stay, it's an enormous market. You know, the average senior has a net worth of $1.2 million. Wait a minute. My banjo's worth a couple $100, couple guitars. I could probably come up with a couple grand of things that I'm worth. I don't have $1.2 million, but that's the average net worth. I think the average senior has $60,000 in equity in their home. There's money there. There's about, and correct me if I'm wrong here, please, but I think there's about 30,000 home inspectors in just the US. Does anybody know that? Hollis, do you know anybody of that? Some great things in the chat. Let's open those up.
I think that's probably pretty close, Eric.
Okay, good. So knowing that last year about 6 million homes were sold, that's an average of 200 projects, 200 inspections per inspector. A lot of work. Now the home improvement industry. In 2020, 50 million projects. Did you know that there's more money spent in home improvements than our infrastructure? So when you drive down the highway and you see a big highway project and they're spending, $10 million fixing some exchange and there's $1 million pieces of equipment, look around the neighborhood. There's more dollars being spent in that community than that one project. So 50 million projects, that's 1,700 per home inspector. That's a lot of work out there. We just need to let the consumer, but go through the designers and contractors to let them know how valuable you are. So now let's evaluate adding home value. I found this just recently from Family Handyman magazine. These are percentages of projects that people are planning. People want to do it in their home. We know the pandemic really turned the focus around to my house. I want to fix my house now. If we look at each of those, this little chart I created, across the top, I'm going to go back one slide, these projects, the landscape, kitchen, office, bathroom, bedroom, deck. There they are, columns, landscape, bathroom, kitchen. So on the left, these are just a few of the things we need to think of, like no steps. Where do we need no steps? In the landscaping, no steps in the landscaping. In the bathroom, no step, no threshold walking in the door. Showers, completely smooth, absolutely no step. Kitchens, how many times is there a carpet in the living room and tile in the kitchen? And there's a little step. When I say a step, I'm saying anything above 0. Bedrooms, decks, patios, offices, no steps. And we could continue on with this. Slip resistance. I had a Zoom meeting a little while ago with a lady that works for a company called Altro. It's a massive international conglomerate of flooring, walls. They're more in the commercial industry. They're coming into the residential. She was explaining to me the different studies and different ways they have of tracking slip resistance, knowing when a floor is slippery. The key, she said, is to make sure from one floor to the next, it's the same. She said if you had a house and every floor in there was like glass, perfectly smooth, you would get used to it. You would walk very carefully. But most of our homes aren't that way. Our homes have different slip resistance. Supports. I'm not going to use the word grab bar because a grab bar is considered a medical device. And unless you're a medical expert, never use the word grab bar. So what do we call that bar that goes in the shower? A shower bar. What about a bar next to the toilet? A toilet bar. Let's just call it so a client would go, toilet bar. Oh, that's going to go next to the toilet? Yeah, sounds good to me. I'm waiting to see when they come out with some of those bars that have like a telephone cradle and a docking station so I can recharge my phone. Lighting, air quality, color contrast. These items are needed all throughout the house. Kitchens. Here's some numbers. Minor mid-range kitchen is about $23,000. When the kitchen's done, you get a 77% return on investment. So people are wanting to do this. People are wanting to work. A major upscale kitchen costs an average of $135,000. The most expensive kitchen I ever worked on was $500,000. It's a kitchen in a family room. People put the kitchen in. A year later, they sold the house. Next family moved in. They completely remodeled the whole house. I did find out that the kitchen, they took the kitchen out because it was all, obviously it was worth a fortune. The kitchen cost twice what the house was worth. Bathrooms, a few years ago, Remodeling Magazine did a study, and you can see there in the middle, the clip bathroom. What was interesting was that return on investment. Now the clip bathroom, which everybody would think, oh, that's full of grab bars and it's really ugly, it still kept it up there, about a 58% return on investment. Remodeling houses, you can make money. So now let's look at some next steps. I see a bar in the unfinished basement that includes a walkout. Have you seen some of those pictures of putting a bar in the shower, like a rack for a wine bottle in the glass? I love that idea. My wife would love that idea. So now let's create some next steps for you. I love this picture. If you don't recognize it, this is the first footprint of a human on the moon. That's what we're doing. We're stepping into new territory here. Your business structure, is it all okay? Everybody happy? Everybody comfortable economically? Do you wake up in the morning wanting to go to work? Do you want it to be Monday so you can start another 7 days of work? If your business structure is great, good. Ask for advice. Have some professionals help you. And when you think of this whole laundry list here of different professionals to ask, remember, they could all be clients of yours. So reach out to professionals, ask them to help you within your business. We are now setting up a nonprofit foundation. And guess what? We're not paying for consultants to help us because the Small Business Administration is paying for, it's called SCORE. They're paying for a SCORE representative, and he's one of the 2 top people in the country setting up nonprofits. He's free to me, not paying a penny. Marketing, you already have the skills to diversify, because I think home inspectors are very unique because you're involved in everything in the house. You're not just the painting, not just the plumber, not just the electrician. You've got your hands in and you're knowledgeable about everything in there. And you have an enormous list of past clients. I don't know, go ahead and throw it in the chat room. How many, I just want to see an average of how many inspections do you do a year? Every one of those people are a possible entree for you to come back. You could say, hey, you know, I helped you with your home inspection when you bought your house. Hope everything's okay. Let me know if you're going to remodel your kitchen, because I have some folks I know that can do that. And I can even come in and give you some pointers on things you need. I see Richard, 200 so far this year. Wow, that's great. So think about the marketing, what you're doing. Best year, 453 inspections. Anybody hiring? That sounds like a great business. How about your emotional threshold? 750. Wow. Is that by yourself, Kate? Do you have a staff? That's just amazing. So let's think about your emotional threshold. How much can you handle? How are you doing there, Kate, with 750 inspections a year? Now that might sound like a lot. A couple decades ago, the largest remodeling company, it's a team. Thank you, Kate. The largest remodeling company a couple years ago was actually an insurance company that handled 50,000 projects a year. So never think you got too much going. So Kate, think of that. They had 50,000 projects a year. So as you can see, you've come this far in life, just keep going. Don't ever think I'm not worth it. Don't ever think I don't have value. Expand your education. Learn, learn, learn. I've taken every class I could ever get my hands on. I got tired of putting things up on the walls, so I just put them in a notebook. I don't know where they are now. My credentials and certification, I keep track of those. But all the classes I've taken over the years, I don't remember most of those, but I know they helped me in some way. Your next steps. The Living in Place Institute. What is that? We're creating a worldwide network of professionals working together to make all homes safe, healthy, comfortable for everyone through awareness and professional education. We have graduates representing 8 nations, and our education partners, those manufacturing companies, are global. So the Living in Place Institute, the people who graduate our programs now, the biggest comments we hear are, I like not only learning all that, but I like now being part of this enormous network of people from all facets of the housing and the medical industry. So your next steps are really to take an education class, to learn. Learning, what did we learn today? Understanding why changes are needed in home design and products, because we can't keep doing it the way we're doing. Between 2007 to 2016, fall death rates for seniors increased 30%. We have to stop. 1 in 4 seniors fall every year, $34,000 a fall. We estimate half those falls could have been prevented with safer designs and products. You can make a difference. We analyzed some different business opportunities. We looked at evaluating home values. And then we're wrapping it up now with creating your next steps. I see Kate average over 550 a year. We all have a lot to learn from Kate, a lot to learn. So now let's throw chats in. If you just want to turn your mic on and ask questions, that's more than fine with me. That's what I'm here for, to answer your questions. As I'm waiting, you can see on the screen our classes. The course, it's a 16-hour course. It's ASHI approved for 16 CEU hours. We had dropped our prices from $9.99 to $6.99 before the pandemic to help people in business. Well, people are pretty busy now, so we're raising our prices back up. Questions, comments? I'd like to see some of those. And if you don't put a question up, Hollis, I'm going to grab my banjo, my harmonica. I'm going to start playing.
Hey, Eric, sometimes when I'm coming down a stairs in a place I'm inspecting, I would like to see a yellow line at the edge of the stair tread. You know, it kind of lets you know you're not going to stumble.
Well, wouldn't it be great if their carpet industry, the carpet runners, what if they engineered that and trained carpet installers to take that roll, turn it sideways, cut it into like 3-foot wide pieces, and let the carpet people make it so that that specific tread has that stripe you're talking about with a contrasting color, and it's reinforced so it doesn't wear out and it's non-slip. Then add in, how about lighting underneath each of those handrails? There's a company in Canada that's released a modular system of handrails that you could put a handrail in a couple hours time, a perfect, beautiful handrail with LED lights built in. Yeah, so that line.
I've seen that, looks good.
Yeah, doesn't that? When I would have remodeling projects, I would bring in that tape, the reflective tape, and I would put it on every step in somebody's home. And I would tell the client, this will only be here during our project. I don't want my workers getting hurt. Would you believe it? More than half the time the owners went, can you leave that here? We like that. What other ideas might somebody have? Or questions? How can we keep improving lives for people? I think the answer is simple. Just learn from each other. Isn't that how we've always done it? Isn't that how the home inspection industry has grown? Learning from each other how to do things better, more efficiently. That's how we've done. Maximum slope of a ramp. Good question. In a home, there are no requirements in a home. In a public space, now listen to this carefully, bud. The ADA says if the slope is greater than 1 in 20, it's called a handicap ramp, and it cannot be greater than 1 in 12. Unfortunately, the commercial industry says ramps 1 in 12. No, never build a ramp 1 in 12. Make it 1 in 20. Did you know that our US highway system, you cannot build a US highway greater than 1 in 20 slope? So why is it that we can put a ramp in for somebody in a wheelchair at 1 in 12? Go to the 1 in 20. How do you build a house with a crawl space where the garage floor is flat with the house? Tell me a little bit more about it. Crawl space House with a crawl space, garage floor is flat with the house. Talk a little bit more about that, Kyle. But as we look here, online live, the classes right now, you're right, Kyle, 1 in 20 slope. The classes right now, we've gone from live right now. If you take a class here soon, one of these ones you see, it's a 2-hour live Zoom class. Then it's 8 pre-recorded classes. They're on demand. You can watch them again and again whenever you want. Then we come back for a 2-hour class. By the end of the year, we will be switching that, and we will be giving everyone the opportunity to just take it on demand. Great questions and comments. I just want to encourage everyone. Let me go back to explaining what these classes are so you'll know. The next class coming up is July 20th. You'll receive for free an e-manual. You can buy a hard copy if you want. In that first 2-hour class, there's networking, that's learning what the program is, changing your thinking to helping everyone. There's also an experiential meal where we'll walk you through suiting up, disabling your hands, your vision, try to see you make a sandwich like that. Then they will increase in price. So that's $6.99 July 20th. We've had people sign up an hour before the class. If you just call me, we can get you in. So please, please, you owe it to yourself. You owe it to your clients, to your family, to your friends. And remember, I showed you my grandchildren. If my grandchildren walk into a house that you've inspected or had part to do with, and there's not 2 handrails, we're going to have a little discussion. Might be 70 years from now, I'll be hitting 141, but we're going to have a discussion. Count on that. Again, thank you, everybody. I appreciate you sincerely. Thank you, Hollis, for working with me and setting this up. Great group of inspectors. I'm looking forward to when we can all get together and meet each other again. In the meantime, let's just keep meeting on Zoom. Thank you, everyone.